Chapter 1. A Dishonorable Trade. The grand hall of Lord Varitha's palace was as imposing as it was oppressive. Towering columns of dark obsidian reflected the dim glow of chandeliers fashioned from alien crystals. The air was thick with tension as Captain Marcus Hale strode through the vast chamber, his boots echoing on the polished floor. He wore a grim expression, his sharp features framed by the scars of a man who had seen too many battles. At the end of the hall sat Lord Varith, the ruler of the Vorlith Dominion, a small but strategically vital territory on the fringes of the Galactic Order. Varith was an imposing figure, his silvered skin and 4 golden eyes giving him an air of otherworldly authority. Yet, there was a restlessness in his posture, a sign that even the mighty lord felt the weight of the political storm brewing in his domain. "You summoned me," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the silence. "Yes, human," Varith replied, his tone disdainful. "You are here because you owe me and I have decided how you will repay that debt." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That's not how I remember our agreement. I risked my crew to smuggle your contraband past Galactic Order patrols. If anything, you still owe me." Varitha's golden eyes narrowed. "The cargo you delivered was worthless. The Order seized the rest of my shipment, thanks to your incompetence." Marcus clenched his fists, but forced himself to remain calm. "I got your ship past the blockade. Your crew was the one that fumbled the handoff. If you're looking for someone to blame, try them." Varith leaned back in his ornate throne, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "Perhaps, but I am a reasonable ruler, Captain Hale. I will forgive your failure. If you take something off my hands." He clapped his hands, and the heavy doors at the far end of the chamber creaked open. 2 guards entered, escorting a young alien woman. Her slender frame was draped in a simple, dull robe that contrasted sharply with the opulence of the palace. Her silver hair fell in unkempt waves, and her golden eyes so like her father's were downcast, avoiding Marcus's gaze. "This is my daughter, Zyra," Varith said, his voice dripping with condescension. "A useless burden who has no place in my court. She's of no value to me, but perhaps you can find a use for her." A shocking proposal. Marcus stared at Varith, his disbelief quickly turning to anger. "You're offering me your daughter? Like she's some kind of commodity?" "She is exactly that," Varith said coldly. "Consider it repayment for your incompetence." Marcus turned his gaze to Zyra, who stood silently, her expression unreadable. He saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands clenched at her sides. She wasn't just resigned, she was humiliated. "No deal," Marcus said, his voice hard. "I don't deal in people. Find another way to settle your grudge." Varitha's smile widened. "You misunderstand, Captain. This is not a negotiation. Either you take her, or you face the consequences of your failure." The guards behind Marcus shifted, their hands moving toward their weapons. Marcus suppressed the urge to curse. He was outnumbered, and while he trusted his skills, he wasn't in the mood for a suicidal brawl. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "I'll take her. But don't expect me to come running the next time you need someone to clean up your mess." Varith chuckled, clearly pleased with himself. "Oh, I won't. She's your problem now?" A new passenger. The journey back to the Dauntless, Marcus's ship, was silent. Zyra followed him without a word, her head bowed and her movements hesitant. The crew, a motley group of humans and aliens, watched curiously as Marcus brought her aboard. "Who's the new recruit?" asked Tasha, the ship's engineer, a wiry human with a sharp tongue. "Not a recruit," Marcus replied curtly. "Just an unexpected passenger." Tasha raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. She gave Zyra a once-over, her expression skeptical. "She doesn't look like much. Hope she's not dead weight." Zyra flinched at the comment, but said nothing. Marcus shot Tasha a warning look before leading Zyra to a small, sparsely furnished cabin. "This is where you'll stay," he said, his tone neutral. "Keep to yourself, don't touch anything, and try not to get in the way." Zyra nodded mutely, her golden eyes briefly meeting his before darting away. Marcus sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. He wasn't good at this dealing with people, especially ones as broken as she seemed. "Look," he said, softening his tone, "I don't know what your deal is, and I'm not interested in dragging you into my problems. Just stay out of trouble, and we'll get along fine." Zyra nodded again, her voice barely audible. Understood. First impressions. Life aboard the Dauntless was anything but easy. The crew worked tirelessly to maintain the ship and secure contracts in a galaxy rife with danger and competition. Zyra struggled to find her place among them, her father's cruel words echoing in her mind. But despite her insecurities, she began to notice patterns in the crew's operations, inefficiencies in their systems, and vulnerabilities in their security protocols. Quietly, she started making small adjustments, leaving notes for the crew or discreetly fixing minor issues. At first, no one noticed. But when a malfunction in the ship's navigation system was resolved without explanation, Marcus began to suspect someone had stepped in. A glimmer of potential. One evening, Marcus found Zyra in the engine room, her hands deftly working on a console. She froze when she saw him, her expression a mix of guilt and fear. "What are you doing?" he asked, his tone more curious than accusatory. I noticed the fuel efficiency was dropping," she said hesitantly. "I thought I could fix it." Marcus studied her for a moment, then glanced at the console. Sure enough, the system was running smoother than it had in weeks. "Well," he said, crossing his arms, "you're full of surprises, aren't you?" Zyra looked away, unsure if he was mocking her or genuinely impressed. "I just wanted to help." Marcus nodded slowly. "Keep it up, and you might just prove your father wrong." For the first time, Zyra allowed herself a small smile. Chapter 2. Seeds of Potential. Life aboard the Dauntless was an endless grind, a delicate dance between survival and profit in the lawless expanses of space. For the crew, efficiency was key. Each member knew their role, their duties, and their limits. Zyra, however, didn't fit into the system, at least, not yet. The crew was skeptical of her presence. To them, she was just a passenger, an obligation foisted on Captain Marcus Hale by an arrogant alien lord. But Marcus, though reluctant to admit it, had begun to see glimmers of something more in her. A trial by fire. The Dauntless drifted through a sparse asteroid field, its sensors scanning for any sign of salvageable wreckage. It was a slow day, a rare respite from the usual chaos of their missions. Marcus was in the cockpit, reviewing potential contracts, when Tasha, the ship's engineer, burst in. "Captain," she said, her tone urgent, "we've got a problem." Marcus turned to her, his brow furrowing. "What kind of problem?" "Power fluctuations," Tasha replied. "Started an hour ago, and they're getting worse. If we don't fix it, we're looking at a total systems shutdown." Marcus swore under his breath and followed Tasha to the engine room. The hum of the ship's core was uneven, the lights flickering ominously. The crew was gathered, their faces tense as they debated the source of the issue. "It's the coolant system," said Rin, a burly alien with sharp blue skin. "It's been acting up for weeks." "Or it's the regulators," countered Kai, the ship's navigator. "They're overdue for maintenance." As the crew argued, Zyra stood quietly in the corner, her eyes scanning the control panels. Marcus noticed her and frowned. "You've been poking around in here, haven't you?" he asked, his tone sharp. "What do you make of it?" The crew fell silent, turning to look at her. Zyra hesitated, her golden eyes flicking nervously between Marcus and the others. "I think it's the feedback loop," she said finally, her voice soft but steady. "The coolant and regulators are fine, but the loop is overloading the system. We need to recalibrate it." Tasha raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly do you know that?" "I ran a diagnostic," Zyra replied, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I saw the patterns." Marcus exchanged a glance with Tasha, then nodded. "Do it." The crew muttered among themselves, but stepped aside as Zyra approached the console. Her hands moved quickly, her confidence growing with each keystroke. Within minutes, the power fluctuations stabilized, and the lights returned to normal. "Well, I'll be damned," Tasha said, her tone grudgingly impressed. Zyra turned to Marcus, her expression uncertain. "Did I do it right?" Marcus gave her a small smile. "Yeah, you did." Earning their respect. The power issue was a turning point for Zyra. Slowly, the crew began to see her as more than a burden. She wasn't just fixing things, she was improving them. From optimizing the navigation systems to streamlining the cargo operations, her quiet contributions made the Dauntless more efficient than ever. One evening, Marcus found her in the cargo bay, surrounded by open crates and scattered tools. She was tinkering with a broken drone, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dim light. "Working late?" he asked, leaning against the doorway. Zyra looked up, startled. "I couldn't sleep." Marcus nodded, stepping closer. "You've been busy lately." The crews noticed. "I just want to help," Zyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to be useless." Marcus crouched beside her, studying the drone. "Your father's an idiot." Zyra blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "He called you useless," Marcus said. "But from where I'm standing, you're the smartest person on this ship." Her cheeks flushed, and she looked away. "I don't know about that." "Well, I do," Marcus said firmly. "You've got potential, Zyra. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." For the first time, Zyra felt a spark of pride. Maybe she wasn't useless after all. A dangerous detour. The Dauntless' next mission took them to the edge of Nebula Vexus, a volatile region of space known for its magnetic storms and pirate activity. Their contract was simple: recover a lost cargo ship and salvage its valuable payload. But as they approached the derelict vessel, Marcus couldn't shake a sense of unease. The ship was eerily intact, its lights flickering faintly in the void. "This feels wrong," Tasha muttered, her fingers hovering over the controls. "Stay sharp," Marcus said. "Wheel board, check for survivors, and get out." Zyra joined the boarding party, insisting she could help. Marcus was hesitant, but ultimately agreed. Together, they entered the darkened ship, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. The interior was a mess, scattered debris, broken panels, and scorch marks suggesting a fierce battle. But there were no bodies, no signs of life. "Where is everyone?" Rin asked, his voice echoing in the silence. Zyra stopped suddenly, her eyes narrowing. "Do you hear that?" The others listened, and faintly, they heard it, a low, rhythmic hum coming from deeper within the ship. "It's the core," Zyra said. "Something's wrong with it." As they moved toward the source of the sound, the ship came alive. Panels lit up, and automated systems activated, their lights casting an ominous red glow. "It's a trap," Marcus growled, raising his weapon. "Move." The team ran, but the ship's AI was one step ahead. Doors slammed shut, trapping them in a narrow corridor. Drones emerged from hidden compartments, their weapons charging. Zyra stepped forward, her mind racing. "I can stop this." "Are you crazy?" Marcus snapped. "We need to get out of here." "I can do it," Zyra insisted, her voice steady. "Trust me." Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "Do it." Zyra sprinted to a nearby console, her fingers flying across the controls. The drones closed in, but Marcus and the crew held them off, buying her time. With a final keystroke, the AI shut down, and the drones collapsed. The ship fell silent once more, its systems deactivated. Marcus turned to Zyra, his expression a mix of relief and admiration. "You just saved our asses," he said. "Remind me to stop underestimating you." Zyra smiled faintly, her confidence growing with every success. Chapter 3. The Cost of Leadership. The Dauntless limped away from the derelict ship, its engines sputtering slightly from the strain of escaping Nebula Vexus. The crew was alive, but tensions were high. The discovery of the ship's hostile AI and its near-fatal ambush had left everyone on edge. Yet amid the tension, Zyra had earned something new: respect. Sitting in the cockpit with Marcus, Zyra stared at the endless expanse of stars. Her confidence had grown, but the weight of recent events lingered heavily in her mind. "You did good back there," Marcus said, breaking the silence. Zyra glanced at him, her expression conflicted. "I didn't do it alone." "You didn't have to," he replied. "Leadership isn't about doing everything yourself. It's about stepping up when it counts, and you did." Zyra nodded, her golden eyes thoughtful. "What happens next?" Marcus leaned back, his gaze hardening. "We figure out what that ship was doing so close to Trilarian space, and we deal with whatever's coming." A growing threat? Back aboard the Dauntless, the crew debriefed in the ship's central hub. Tasha projected a hologram of the derelict ship, its damaged hull rotating slowly in the air. "This wasn't a random trap," Tasha said. "The AI wasn't just defending the ship it was hunting. Those drones were designed to capture, not kill." "Capture who?" asked Rin, his tone gruff. The Trilarians, Zyra said quietly. All eyes turned to her. Or at least, the hybrids. Marcus frowned. Hybrids? What are you talking about? Zyra hesitated. But the truth weighed too heavily to keep hidden. The Trilarian Empire has been experimenting with enhancements, crossbreeding their genetics with other species to create stronger, smarter offspring. And you'd know about this because? Marcus pressed. Her gaze dropped to the floor. Because I'm one of them. The room fell silent. Marcus stared at her, his expression unreadable. Tasha crossed her arms, her face a mix of disbelief and curiosity. That explains a lot, Tasha muttered. But it doesn't answer why the Galactic Order or whoever's behind that AI is after you. Because hybrids like me are dangerous, Zyra said. To them, we're proof that the Trilarians could one day rival the Galactic Order. They want to eliminate the threat before it grows. Marcus leaned forward, his tone sharp. And your father? Does he know about this? Zyra's shoulders stiffened. Of course he does. He just didn't think I was worth keeping. The bitterness in her voice was palpable, and Marcus's expression softened. Well, he's wrong. A dire mission. Before they could plan their next move, an incoming transmission interrupted the meeting. The holographic projector flickered, revealing a frantic Trilarian officer. Captain Hale, the officer said, his voice strained. I'm calling on behalf of Lord Vareth. Our colony on Velner 7 is under attack. We need immediate assistance. Marcus's jaw tightened. Why call me? Don't you have an entire fleet? The officer hesitated. The attackers, they're not ordinary raiders. They're using technology similar to what you described aboard that derelict ship. We can't fight them alone. Marcus exchanged a glance with Zyra, whose expression had grown grim. We'll head your way, Marcus said reluctantly. But if this turns out to be a trap dash, it's not, Zyra interjected. Velner 7 is vital to the Trilarian Empire. If it falls, so does everything my father has worked for. Then let's make sure that doesn't happen, Marcus said. The battle for Velner 7. The Dauntless arrived at Velner 7 to find chaos. The colony, a sprawling network of domed cities and industrial complexes, was under siege. Sleek, black ships with glowing red insignias swarmed the skies, firing precision strikes that crippled defenses. Marcus barked orders to his crew as the Dauntless plunged into the fray. Rin, man the turrets. Tasha, keep those shields up. Zyra, with me. Zyra followed Marcus to the ship's tactical station, her mind racing. We can't just shoot our way through this, she said. Their ships are too advanced. Then what do you suggest? Marcus asked. She studied the battlefield, her golden eyes narrowing. Their attack patterns there focusing on the central power grid. If we can disrupt their coordination, we might have a chance. Marcus nodded. Tasha, can you jam their comms? Already on it, Tasha replied. But it won't last long. Good enough, Marcus said, turning to Zyra. You're up. Take the helm. Zyra hesitated, but Marcus's steady gaze gave her the confidence she needed. She took control of the Dauntless, weaving through enemy fire with surprising skill. The ship's weapons blazed, taking out 2 enemy fighters and clearing a path to the power grid. A hero emerges. As the Dauntless approached the power grid, Zyra's mind raced. She tapped into the colony's systems, using her hybrid abilities to interface directly with the mainframe. The energy surge was overwhelming, but she pushed through, overriding the enemy's control of the grid. They're losing coordination. Tasha shouted. Their ships are pulling back. The crew cheered as the tide of battle shifted. Trilarian forces rallied, driving the enemy ships into retreat. But as the last of the attackers fled, a massive cruiser appeared on the horizon, its weapons charging. We're not done yet, Marcus said grimly. Zyra, any ideas? Zyra's hands flew over the controls. If we overload the power grid, it might take out their cruiser. But we'll only have one shot. Do it, Marcus said. We'll cover you. The Dauntless maneuvered into position, its shields barely holding against the cruiser's onslaught. Zyra poured everything she had into the grid, the strain nearly overwhelming her. At the last moment, she triggered the overload. A blinding explosion rocked the battlefield, consuming the enemy cruiser in a fiery burst. The Dauntless was thrown back, its systems sparking, but it held together. When the dust settled, the The colony was safe and Zyra was a hero. A new destiny. Back on Velner 7, the colony's leaders hailed Zyra as a savior. For the first time in her life, she felt respected not for her lineage, but for her actions. As she and Marcus prepared to leave, a familiar figure approached, Lord Vareth. His expression was unreadable as he looked at his daughter. "You've done well," he said stiffly. "Perhaps I underestimated you." Zyra met his gaze, her voice steady. "You didn't underestimate me, you refused to see me. But I don't need your approval anymore." Vareth's eyes widened slightly, but he said nothing as Zyra turned away, her head held high. The next chapter. Aboard the Dauntless, Marcus found Zyra staring out at the stars. "You all right?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "For the first time, I think I am." Marcus nodded. "You're more than all right, Zyra. You're one hell of a hero." She looked at him, her golden eyes shining with determination. "And we're just getting started." As the Dauntless sped into the unknown, Zyra embraced her new purpose not as a burden or a pawn, but as a force to be reckoned with in a galaxy that needed her. The Dauntless sailed through the quiet void of space, its engines humming in a steady rhythm. For the first time since the crew's harrowing battle at Velner 7, there was peace aboard the ship. But in the captain's quarters, Marcus Hale sat across from Zyra, discussing the future. The glow of the holographic map between them reflected off their faces, highlighting potential new missions and unexplored sectors. But Zyra's focus was elsewhere. "Do you think it's enough?" she asked, her voice tinged with doubt. "Saving Velner 7? Proving myself?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. "Enough for who? Your father? The galaxy? Or you?" Zyra hesitated, then sighed. "I don't know. Maybe all of them." "You've done more in the last few weeks than most people do in a lifetime," Marcus said. "You don't need anyone's approval, Zyra, least of all your father's." She smiled faintly, the weight of his words sinking in. "It's not just about him. I want to help more. There are other colonies like Velner 7, people who need someone to fight for them." Marcus grinned. "Sounds like you found your calling." Zyra nodded, her golden eyes glowing with determination. "Maybe I have." An unexpected message. As they spoke, the ship's comm system crackled to life. Hera, the Dauntless AI, interrupted. "Captain, an encrypted transmission has just arrived. It appears to be from Trilarian space." Marcus and Zyra exchanged a glance. "Put it through," Marcus said. The holographic map flickered, replaced by the image of a Trilarian official in formal attire. His expression was tense, his golden eyes darting nervously. "Captain Hale," the official began, his voice hurried. "This is Minister Salus, speaking on behalf of the Trilarian High Council. We've received reports of your actions at Velner 7. Your assistance saved countless lives, and for that, we are grateful." "What do you want, Minister?" Marcus asked, his tone wary. "It's not what we want, it's what we need," Salus replied. His gaze shifted to Zyra. "Lady Zyra, your heroism has not gone unnoticed. The High Council wishes to meet with you." Zyra frowned. "Why? The Council has never cared about me before." "The galaxy is changing," Salus said. "The Galactic Order grows more aggressive with each passing day, and the Trilarian Empire must adapt. Your actions have inspired hope, both within and beyond our borders. The Council believes you could play a key role in uniting our people." Marcus folded his arms. "Sounds like they want to use her as a pawn." Salus shook his head. "This is no ploy, Captain. The Council recognizes Zyra's potential not as a tool, but as a leader. We're offering her the chance to shape the future of the Trilarian Empire." Zyra's heart raced. The idea of returning to her homeworld, of facing the people who had dismissed her as useless, was daunting. But the thought of making a real difference outweighed her fear. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "Thank you," Salus said. "We'll await your decision. Safe travels." The transmission ended, leaving the room in silence. A new path. Marcus studied Zyra carefully. "You don't have to do this. You've already proven yourself." "I know," Zyra said, her voice steady. "But if there's even a chance I can help my people and others like them, I have to try." Marcus nodded. "Then you won't do it alone. Wherever this leads, you've got the Dauntless and its crew behind you." Zyra smiled, a sense of peace settling over her. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. As the Dauntless set course for Trilarian space, Zyra stood on the observation deck, gazing at the stars. She thought of her journey from an outcast labeled as useless to a hero with the power to change the galaxy. And though the path ahead was uncertain, she knew one thing for sure. She would never stop fighting for what she believed in. Epilogue: The Hero's Return. The Dauntless entered Trilarian space under escort, flanked by sleek, angular ships adorned with the Empire's sigil. The sight of Trilarian ships offering a human captain safe passage was unprecedented, a symbol of how much the galaxy had already changed. In the observation bay, Zyra stood silently, watching her homeworld grow larger in the viewport. Trilaria was as beautiful as she remembered, its silver oceans and shimmering cities a testament to the Empire's technological brilliance. Yet, her stomach churned with a mix of nostalgia and apprehension. Thinking of turning back? Marcus Hale teased as he entered the room, his rugged face softened by a rare smile. Zyra shook her head. No, but it feels strange. Coming back like this. Marcus leaned against the bulkhead. You've got nothing to prove, Zyra. You're walking in there as a hero, not a cast-off. Maybe, she said, glancing at him, but heroes don't always get happy endings. An imperial welcome. The Trilarian High Council awaited Zyra in the grand chamber of the Imperial Spire, a vast hall lined with towering columns and intricate carvings depicting the Empire's history. The council members' elders with silvered skin and piercing golden eyes watched her approach with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Zyra walked with confidence, flanked by Marcus and two of the Dauntless crew. Her simple attire contrasted sharply with the ornate robes of the counselors, yet she carried herself with a dignity that silenced any murmurs of doubt. At the head of the chamber sat Lord Vareth, her father. His expression was unreadable, though his eyes lingered on her longer than the others. Zyra, one of the counselors began, their voice formal. You have proven yourself not only as a warrior, but as a symbol of hope for our people. The High Council recognizes your contributions and wishes to honor you. Zyra inclined her head. I'm grateful for the recognition, but if you're asking me to be a figurehead, I'm not interested. A ripple of surprise passed through the chamber, but Zyra held her ground. I didn't come here for titles or accolades, she continued. I came because the Trilarian Empire needs to change. We've spent too long looking down on others, dismissing those who don't fit our narrow ideals. I know what that feels like, and I won't stand by while others suffer the same. The counselors exchanged glances, their initial surprise giving way to thoughtful consideration. Even Lord Vareth seemed taken aback, his composed facade faltering for a moment. A call to action. Change is not easy, another counselor said carefully. The traditions of our empire are deeply rooted. Tradition isn't an excuse for stagnation, Zyra countered. The galaxy is evolving, and we need to evolve with it. The Galactic Order won't stop until they control everything, and the only way to resist them is to build alliances not through fear, but through trust and mutual respect. Her words hung in the air, their weight undeniable. Marcus watched proudly, knowing she was speaking not just as a Trilarian, but as someone who had experienced the best and worst of multiple worlds. After a long pause, Lord Vareth rose from his seat. His gaze swept the chamber before settling on his daughter. You speak boldly, Zyra, he said, his voice measured. And perhaps you speak wisely. The Empire must adapt if it is to survive. The High Council will deliberate on your proposals. Zyra nodded, though she could see the reluctance in his eyes. She knew that change wouldn't come easily, but she was willing to fight for it. An unlikely alliance. Later, in the quiet of her assigned quarters, Zyra sat with Marcus, discussing the council's reaction. You've rattled their cage, Marcus said with a grin. That's a start. They need more than rattling, Zyra replied. If they don't act soon, the Galactic Order will tear us apart. Marcus leaned forward. Then make them act. You've got the leverage now. Use it. Zyra smiled faintly, the spark of determination returning to her eyes. You're right. If they won't lead, I will. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime. The door slid open, revealing Lord Vareth. His expression was somber, but there was a hint of something else. Pride? May I speak with you? He asked, his tone uncharacteristically hesitant. Zyra glanced at Marcus, who nodded and left the room. She turned to her father, her posture guarded. "What do you want?" she asked. Vareth sighed, the weight of his authority momentarily slipping. "I underestimated you, Zyra. I let my arrogance blind me to your potential. For that, I am sorry." Zyra studied him, searching for any hint of insincerity. "It's a little late for apologies." "Perhaps," he admitted, "but I see now that you are more than I ever gave you credit for. The council may resist change, but I am willing to support you." The words were unexpected, and for a moment, Zyra didn't know how to respond. Finally, she nodded. "Then prove it." The beginning of a revolution. The following weeks were a whirlwind of negotiations, planning, and alliance building. With Lord Vareth's support, Zyra spearheaded initiatives to reform the Empire, forging partnerships with other species and rallying resistance against the Galactic Order. The Dauntless played a key role, its crew working tirelessly to carry out missions that strengthened their cause. Marcus, ever the skeptic, became Zyra's most trusted ally, his unwavering loyalty a source of strength. Together, they inspired a movement that spread beyond Trilarian space, uniting disparate factions under a common banner. Zyra's vision of a galaxy built on trust and cooperation began to take shape, though the road ahead remained fraught with challenges. A legacy forged in stars. Years later, Zyra stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, now a symbol of hope in a galaxy on the brink of transformation. The stars stretched endlessly before her, each one a reminder of the countless lives she had touched. Marcus approached, his expression thoughtful. "You've done it, you know. Changed the game." Zyra smiled, her golden eyes glowing with quiet pride. "Not alone. And we're not finished yet." As the Dauntless leapt into hyperspace, Zyra felt a sense of peace she had never known. She was no longer the useless daughter of an arrogant lord. She was a leader, a hero, and a beacon of hope for a galaxy that needed her. And she knew that the best was yet to come.